this segment. Now, Mr. D, the gentleman you actually see in front of you, who's this teacher there, he literally was a teacher for many, many years, and he became a stand-up comedian. And Canada said, that's really funny, because his humor was based on his classroom experience, all right? So it's very funny. Would you like to do a situation comedy? And that never happens in the United States, but yes. Okay, tongue-in-cheek, it does happen. At any rate, he does do it, and you're going to see the premiere, the commercial that was advertised in the premiere when it was first going to start. Now, the reason I'm showing you this one clip is he's explaining how he grades papers, and it has to be germane to what we're talking about here today. So he's grading papers, but he's doing it in a bar because that's where most of us grade our papers. And he's explaining how he does his grading to a friend who's not a teacher. I think there's some really scholarly, very professional ways of doing it that he espouses that maybe we can incorporate right here in the United States. He said, in full mockery with tongue in cheek again. So understand the absurdity you're about to see. Let's relax and enjoy. And uncomfortably, let's see if we recognize any of these practices. Here we go.
And now a sneak peek at the new comedy series, Mr. D.
There goes your weekend, eh, Marvin?
Not really. Let me explain how this works. If these were regular tests, what I would do is I would find the smart students, Maya, and I would mark hers first.
Right.
And I'd use that as my answer key. But these are essay questions. Now, if I were to read these, it would take forever. So I don't. So I look at their mark going into it. Okay, like Maya, where's Maya? Has the highest mark in the class. There she is. So that's my answer key.
Don't you already know the answers?
Sometimes there's I gotta give her a good mark, a couple circles, and then sometimes too vague.
Right.
That way I don't have to give her 100.
Yeah,
They only
keep
look
it
at the
realistic.
mark, 96. I give her a little more than she has going in. That way she won't come back and challenge me. Okay?
It's a good system.
Jimmy, look at Jimmy. Nothing.
Right, except for nothing.
Garbage. Waste of time. 33, there's some words there, but I have no time to read them. So then I get angry. Jimmy, ridiculous. This has got to stop.
You can say the same thing to you.
Okay, you got the system?
Yeah, it's a good system, buddy.
You do those ones.
You want me to work?
You don't really mark, you just
All right.
put marks on it. And you put a circle, you
That
circle a
seems
number.
good. I'm a forger.
Okay, here's Mike. Now, Mike has got a 62.
You should give him an 80.
Give him an
make his
80.
day.
Make his day.
Right.
Okay? And you tell him his parents are excited like that. Finally.
Like you've been rooting for him the whole time.
Yeah, about
Right.
time. Thank you.
Good.
This person, Shauna, I don't like her.
Right.
So what I do is I fail her on the exam, but I just give her enough to pass the course, so I don't have to teach her again. So it's like a lot of check marks, question marks, underlines, and things. Couple good comments.
Mediocre.
I've used that one. That's a good one. Happy face, smile.
That's disturbing.
You are almost a teacher.
Mr. D, Monday starting January 9th on CBC.
The sad part is many of you are laughing at recognition. Yeah, you thought that, hopefully you never did that. That would be really good. The problem is there are a lot of grading practices that people have where they're doing something very similar and they don't realize they're doing that. And you're laughing how absurd it is, but when we pointed out to you, it's just as absurd when you're what you're doing there. Oh no, I didn't realize. I know. So that's what today is, to kind of minimize our hypocrisies, to open eyes, and have a good time. So one of the things we've come to realize is that a lot of schools, not all, but a lot of colleges and teacher preparation institutions, they really don't have a whole course just on how do you design your grade book, how do you design tests and quizzes, assessment literacy. They've got things on educational measurements, big standardized tests, standard deviations, and all of that, and maybe talk about validity and reliability, but really in the micro of the classroom, we don't have a lot of training in that. And when I graduated from my college, I scolded my dean in the exit interview. You did not prepare me for this. I was looking for the class that would tell me this, and it makes me very nervous. How do I know, what's excellent when it comes to the Fertile Crescent in Mesopotamia? I don't know. What do? You have a test? How did you arbitrarily figure out what's an A, what's a B, what's a C? How do you set up the grade book? What do parents complain about the grade? I have no defense. I think you're supposed to know it as a third grader or an eighth grader or a sixth grader, but woo! Maybe that's a fifth grade thing. I don't know. That's really uncomfortable to me. Hence, that's why I wrote my book and got into this stuff really to move forward. I'll also remind you that it's really hard to talk about assessment and grading if you're not intimate with the thing you're actually teaching. So it's actually hard to do it pre-service. It's usually an in-service training to get teachers up to speed at grading. Problem? a lot of us start grading the way we remember it being from our child's mind's eye when we were in school. And we think, well, it was done to me, so I'll do it to them. No, don't do that. We actually have evolved as a species, but also as a profession. The second thing that's going on here is that the way you grade is actually revealing of your true identity. It imbues things. I mean, really, you integrate it in almost everything. So if I want to find out what kind of teacher you are, instructional design, how you interact with kids and parents, even your seating charts, all kinds of stuff, I pretty much can look at your grading policies and I pretty much know exactly who you are as a teacher. It is that revealing of your true colors. So can you imagine me coming into your class? And you go, excuse me, can I see your grade book? Yeah. Do you know what you're doing there? It goes against all the history of all the research and all that is good and kind and ethical in the world. And you continue to perpetuate. You might say, well, who are you to come in and judge me? You don't even teach in my state, let alone my subject or my grade level. You're not in the diocese. Whoa, who are you? I know. It's uncomfortable because it's so deeply personal. And so I'm just going to remind you that the nerves are close to the surface. And basically I'm saying if there's something in here that maybe you want to shift in your grading, or I urge you to shift in your grading, it's really a process of how do I let go of this with which I've associated my identity while I reach for this at the same time. That is a blow. It stings the ego. So one of the things we've learned is that, in order for you to accept a new idea from me, you have to first admit what you were doing was less effective than your ego thought it was. And that's bruising. And some people don't want to go through the sting and the hurt. Problem? That means the kids in your class will continue to suffer because you were inconvenienced by that, or you didn't want to deal with that emotional change. So I'm just going to ask you to be open to that. Recognize that that is a dynamic that might be happening in yourself or in others in the room. And then, would you agree with what the slide says here? At least, certainly the first statement. Okay. Well, I don't know if you're aware of Bob Marzano's work about 15 years ago. And I think it's even worse today because we keep adding things to teachers' plates and not really taking things off. But I remind you that it takes the grade 22 to teach what we tell the public we teach pre-K through grade 12. So we're 10 years shy. We should be graduating people when they're 27 and 28, not 17 and 18, if we were going to do justice to everything. So if you're going to do this stuff, I don't think you can do it with everything because it's physically impossible. School is not set up for teaching. I didn't know if you knew that or not. If we knew back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, what we know today about how the mind learns, we never would have set up schools the way I see it across the diocese, across the state of Pennsylvania, or certainly in Virginia where I am, and all around the nation. We would have done something very differently. So what we're doing now is we're mitigating the negative aspects of those things that mire us in ineffectiveness or unethical policies and practices and so on. So we're doing the best we can. We want to walk in that reality and totally get that. But I think you're going to have to get Animal Farm about your curriculum if you want to do the grading stuff I'm about to share. Animal Farm? Do you remember that book? Somebody might even teach it. Okay. One of the themes in that book was, some animals are simply more equal than other animals, don't you know? Well, some of your standards, your learning targets, are simply more equal. They're more pivotal, they're more leveraging for what's to come. They're your power standards, your big boulders, than other standards. So there's a primary level of standards. For these I will fight the good fight. And then there's secondary. They're important but less so. And then there's that third level of standards. We call it the Elsa level. Let it go, till remain frozen. Sparkles coming out of my fingers, ice crystals. We're gonna do that. This is if I have time, I will do it, but really I'm not gonna sweat it. I'm gonna sleep guilt-free at night without a single worry. If I can actually have that to get through the power standards, the secondary ones, the third ones, and just if we have time. So as you're looking at this, going, well, I can do that with the big boulders, and in all assessment and curriculum mapping, we have found there's 4 to 8 big boulder standards, power standards, in any one discipline, in any one school year, at any one grade level. So I want you to think, okay, what are my top big things? Is it writing an information paragraph? Is it just understanding parts of a plant? Proper nouns and all of that kind of stuff? Is it nomenclature, taxonomic reference, or quantitative and qualitative analysis? Is it an argumentative paper as you get older? What is the big thing around which you rally all year and do these things with that stuff for sure? Then, maybe at least half of the secondary ones, they're important but less so, as you have identified. I'm assuming that your work with Leanne Nicholson helped you do that. She's a friend. I told her where I was today, and she said, oh, give them all hugs. They're going to love you. It's going to be great. I miss them so much. She did a lot of curriculum work with you guys for the past 2 years. I'm hoping you remember that. If you're new, you might not. But yeah, she did. She said, and guess what? And then you could do, and yeah, she's fun. She's effervescent. I find her just a joy to be around because you kind of get energy out of her. She's just that cool. At any rate, if you haven't done a lot of that work, this is going to be a little bit of a steeper climb. But if you have done that work, hopefully you'll find this very, very welcoming as we do that. And then I basically am saying that every day we negotiate with ourselves what level of hypocrisy we will tolerate this day. And some days are more tolerant of hypocrisy than we should be. What do I mean? Any of these that you see on any slide around you, or if you use your microscope, you can put it on your computer, or if you print it out. But whatever it is, bounce your eye through these. Do you get the idea what I mean when I say there's a bit of a contradiction of terms, not as much integrity, there might be some hypocrisy in what we do? I'll give you a moment. Okay, so any of these questions slightly uncomfortable? If you were to sit there at a faculty meeting or grade level meeting or team meeting and just go, hey, are we conflating the report of one thing with the report of something else? Do our grades reflect compliance with tasks or evidence of learning? I'd like to talk about it. Well, would you come across as a teacher geekoid, like me, because I asked those questions? Like, Rick, we could have got out of this committee early, but you had to be philosophical. Whatever it might be, and a derisive eye roll to follow as you do that. Or is this actually very cool? These are more important questions. Here's another one. Putting the palms of your hands on the desk and leaning over and looking people in the eyes and saying, is this the moral thing we do? I think that's actually a very cool thing to consider. Well, that's going to come into play quite a bit today. I'm going to remind you of something though. When you get out of bed in the morning and you're full of energy, ready to go and teach in that class, I just can't wait to get there. This is going to be such a good day. And you have energy all day long, you really enjoy what you're doing, you find meaning in your job, and when you go home, you actually have time to decide what's for dinner. You're like ready to go. You want to drive your own kids around stuff. You are really engaged in the whole world, you're full of life. That most often happens when you're in alignment with your beliefs. So if I believe this, and my actions allow me to do that, and I'm aligned, I'm in congruence, then I find energy and stamina to see it through things that initially might elude me. However, if you are out of alignment, you get out of bed in the morning like, oh man, really? It's not a snow day, please? Oh no, I could really use a snow day. Or whatever it was. And like, oh, now I gotta slog through the day, I have to tolerate this and tolerate that. At the end of the day, you go home and go, no, Mommy has the couch for the next hour. No, you decide dinner. I am so tired of making decisions all day long. These sunglasses, there was paparazzi on the way home. No, it was just a hairy day. Okay, I'm just gonna lie here. Nobody disturb Mommy. No, you go outside. I know, we should run amok. Okay, whatever it is. Well, that's usually because you are out of alignment with what you really believe. So I have this slide here to say, if you want to find energy and teacher mojo, so to speak, you will practice minimizing your hypocrisies. I believe this, but I have to do this in my classroom. I'm going to exhaust myself by the end of the day. But I believe this, and I can actually do it in my class. I'm going to find energy throughout the day. It's really going to be joyful. So if you want that oxygen, you want that teacher mojo, are you in alignment with what you believe? That integrity is huge. So, I remind you that you were hired by the Catholic Church. So I went to the national level. The standards, the benchmarks, I asked your leadership if they would identify where I could find this. And then I selected some things that the Catholic Church is demanding of you. First slide, sorry, that was too fast. 7.2 and 7.3, this is standard 7. These are things that they use to talk about instructional design. So I'm going to give you a moment to read through these, and we are going to switch eventually over to assessment and grading ideas from the Catholic Church National. Okay, take a look. Okay, So if you were hired and you were committed to your job and the Catholic faith, you look at things that engage and motivate kids and create hope, not despair. And you'd be sure you were very, very ethical and moral. Continuing on, again, if you read point 6 and point 7, get a sense of what the Catholic Church is calling you to do. So now we're into equity and inclusion measures. But wait, what about your professionalism, your collaboration? This is what we're doing here today, and what you might be doing if you serve on one of these committees about which Don was speaking earlier. Take a look at your professional duties, opportunities. Okay, so that's where we are there. What about standard 8, which is on assessment? Let's take a look at just the standard itself. A reminder, you are held responsible, accountable. This should be something that drives you in your position in your school. And now even more specifically, let's talk about assessment. So point 3 and point 4 elements in standard 8. Okay, if I came to you and I said, hey, can I see your assessments, please? Good, thank you for handing me your assessments. Yeah, can you show me how they're valid and consistent, transparent, equitable, and justly administered? A lot of people look at that and they just nod, oh yeah, I think I can do that. And I say, no, literally prove it. And then they get real uncomfortable. So it's not a platitude. It's not a simplistic Hallmark card sentiment that you would do this. This is really where the rubber hits the road because whole futures are at stake. We need to get it right. We can't afford not to be doing this with our students and are saying, well, some of the teachers will do that. I'm just going to do my own thing over here. Nope, not really acceptable in the modern era anymore. So today's going to be about this, but also Leanne's work was about this as well. So I'm hoping that you really got into that. And if you really didn't get into it to the degree that today requires, I would invite you to kind of make that your focus for the rest of the school year as much as possible, and I'll give you some suggestions if you'd like. But you're also using a mechanism I love. PLTs have 4 basic questions. The first one is, what do we expect our kids to learn? Those are your standards, your learning targets, the things that were given to you by the diocese as an accredited education body in the state of Pennsylvania. So you're coordinating between all those things. What do I actually have to teach in 3rd grade X and 4th grade Y, whatever it might be. But then, how do I know they're learning it? That's where you and we sit down and break down what is evidentiary. So we literally might go and say, hey, Bob, if there's a Bob in here, I'm not really talking about you. Although if you like this character, okay, I'm talking about you. Anyway, so Bob, when it comes to osmosis versus diffusion, or when it comes to identifying noun-verb agreement, or whatever it is, what's an A or a 4.0 versus what's like almost there? So we have the same line of demarcation together. We literally calibrate our evidence with one another when we do this. I have to take it to that nitty-gritty. You'll see an example of that later today. And then the 3rd question is, what do we do if they don't learn? And then what do we do if they do learn it, maybe even earlier than somebody else? That's responsive teaching. You will see so many different tendrils, some connections between what we do today and these 4 questions. So if you have a strong PLT in your school, your community, it's a great vehicle to actually give this life. If you don't have a strong PLT, then you might want to choose some other options, and I can advise you on that down the road. But usually people in education, we need a structured format to really give this life, to give it some traction in our classrooms. And then, as we mentioned before, I think we're an ethical enterprise. In fact, Doug Reeves, who's a friend, he said this, absent a moral imperative, nothing changes in classrooms. So I just want to remind you that I could stand up here and give you pie charts. Correlation, causation conversation. We can do that. Validity, reliability, research, look at this, the effect size and the meta-analyses. It doesn't change anything in teachers. It's an intellectual, yeah, interesting, and they go right back, close their classroom door, and do what they were doing before. But if I am logical, well-reasoned, and well-researched and all that, and I invoke your ethics as a profession, suddenly people are willing to look in the mirror and make adjustments and go through the sting of the blow to ego. They're willing to do that hard work and do that. So if you are lacking stamina, you're sitting there listening to me when I talk about a grading idea, and you go, hey Rick, nice idea. You can't do that with my students. You can't do that with my grade level or my situation. I'm going to put subtitles below your chin. Just know that when I look you in the face, I'm translating. So under your chin, I'm putting these floating in the air. You're really saying this. I've exhausted my imagination. May I drink from your creativity cup? Please, sir, some more. In other words, you've got to find somebody who helps you achieve escape velocity from that which tethers you to your echo chamber, to less effective teaching. Yeah, we could do that. I'm assuring you, urban, rural, suburban, Alaskan natives, tribal nations, every faith-based school in the world, every DoD school, Department of Defense, every public school, every private school, every charter does this just fine. So you're going to have to decide, oh, it's not for others, it is absolutely for me. And what that does is it creates a little humility, a little humble pie. I think humility brings strength and meaning to faith. And so your compass rose should be thinking about, well, is this really working with kids? How do I find out if it's really working? Not just wait till the test 4 weeks from now, but actually here right now, because I can't really assume. I am not going to presume that just because I said it, you learned it, because I'm Oz. No, I have no proof that I taught it, unless I have proof you carried it forward months down the road. What is the definition of learning in many cognitive psychology circles? It is a significant change in long-term memory. So was I teaching for long-term memory, or was I teaching just to get through the curriculum and the kid forgot it, but I never went back and double-checked that you carried it forward? So I'm going to remind you of something. I'm never going to be invited back after saying this. Your principals will have to pick up emotional debris. Some of you might run screaming from the room, but I'm going to say it nonetheless, and they know I was going to say it, so maybe there's some support for it. I don't know. Nobody cares what you teach. I'm not being flippant. Nobody cares. The diocese shouldn't, and I hope it doesn't, care what you teach. It's what kids carry forward when they're done with you as a teacher. That is your testimony. So imagine the lens. I presented it, they just chose not to learn it. You were deflecting. You were pawning that off. No. It's not what you presented, it's what you have proof the kids carried forward. So that is fundamentally going to change the way I do my instructional design and the way I design assessments. What's one really kind of scary thing that I mean by that? Put previous curriculum on subsequent tests. What? Check it out. Mr. Wormeli, you were cutting and pasting without proofreading. You put plant questions on the moon test. We did plants like 5 months ago. That was September. This is January. No, I meant to do that, Junior. What? We have to know it now? I got an A before. We have to know it now? Yes, you do. And here's the most common response. I apologize for use of the vernacular, but it is the common response, and I just want to make sure that I get the correct accent. Ready? Here it is, and the correct pronunciation of this. The most common response, high school, middle school, elementary, primary, sometimes even college when I serve as an adjunct, when I put previous curriculum on subsequent tests, is this. Dang. That's it, that's all I got. They have nothing more profound than that. They're just shocked about that. Oh, what? Well, I need to remind you that the most recent evidence is the most accurate. What? In the state of California, half of all high school graduates have to retake high school courses in college. Or the military, whichever way they're going to go, or career training institutes. Why? Because the grades are false reports. Nationwide, it's 40% and rising. So I'm hinting that maybe in Pennsylvania it's 40% and rising. So you have to decide. If I test you with something the first half of the year, it's bogus at the end of the year when I do transcripts. Unless I take those 4 to 8 big, most indicative of the discipline power standards and reassess them in subsequent assessments to see what carry forward. Now I do that. I tell kids that. I tell their parents that. I see you at Walmart or Target or the sports bleachers or the church picnic. I will stop you cold. Mrs. Smith, I'm buying your daughter Amy right now. Okay, Amy, right here, right now. You know, right here in the middle of Walmart. Yeah, define cephalopod. CEPH, ceph, that means head, ped, pod, foot, cephalopod, head, foot, animal, molluscus, squid, sir. You may continue shopping. I heard people say this, quick, hiding women's lingerie. Mr. Wormeli never replied us there. He's going to make me add fractions like, with different denominators. I totally forgot how to do it. Or whatever it might be. So understand, I will spot check you. And if the grade goes up, that's fine. But if the grade goes down because you don't know it, the grade goes down. That's integrity. I mean what I say. The grade will always be accurate. Even if it's harsh reality, I will always give you an accurate report. That is the greater gift, the greater legacy for a teacher to give. But wait a minute, I'm not a complete ogre, just sort of an ogre. That sounds really scary at first, but wait, you're totally allowed to go learn it properly, along with the new curriculum we're doing later in the year. But if you want to go back and learn it, I will be your loudest cheerleader. And I will let you be assessed and accredited anew. But I'm going to tell the kids over and over again, the most recent evidence is clearly the most accurate. And I will weigh it the most. So if you didn't carry it forward, you just memorized it for a test, oh, not going to last, that's not going to help. Now the scary part for teachers is that many teachers who switch to this, they realize, oh no, I wasn't teaching for long-term memory, I was teaching just to get through the curriculum. That's really uncomfortable, because some of the onus is on you now. To make sure you change my instructional design, not just to be superficial, but to carry it forward. So this is very organic. I decide this, it has these ramifications, and this imbues all these other decisions as we go through that. So, you know, square peg, round hole, that old analogy? I messed it up here, on purpose. So now I have a round peg, square orifice, or abyss, or recess, whatever you want to call that. But the idea is this, many kids know how to play the game of school. They get the institutional nature, and I just want to say right now, we should be paying kindergarten and preschool teachers double the salary of anybody else K-12. Because they allow the rest of us to have happy teacher lives. Because the kids have been trained how to deal with, I don't know, sit in a chair for 6.5 hours and follow an adult. And the rest of us can actually do the wonderful activities we do. I taught kindergarten before. I'm not kidding. Kindergarten teachers can run circles around high school teachers and middle school teachers. But high school teachers like harumphing when I say that. Like, you know what I'm talking about. Teach kindergarten, then come talk to me. And they're like quivering jello. Oh, jello. Oh, you're right. All right, I get it. So just understand that we really want to make sure that I've got kids in my class who understand how to play the game, who know the rules, who can get by, can guess what's on the teacher's mind. But, here's the contrast. We teach everyone, not just the easiest ones. Not the ones who fit into our easy classifications. You know, the biases we all develop. Oh, I had your brother 2 years ago. I know what you're going to be like. Why would you do that? You can be totally different. Oh, that's just insane. But we do that. We hold on to biases, sometimes unaware. Oh, you're from that culture, so I'm going to just pigeonhole you. You're going to always be like this. Or you're from that culture, or whatever it might be. No. So we're very, very open, but we teach everyone, not just the ones that fit into our earned narrative. We want to honor theirs. So one of the things to remember is you were hired to teach so that children learn, and that means you teach the way they learn, not the way you learned it. Oh, earlier in my career, I taught the way I learned it. And so I said, well, there must be something wrong with you. If you didn't learn it the same way everyone else learned it, what's wrong with you? This makes me instantly go to blaming the kid for her or his lack of learning. No, I'm the adult. I'm not going to put the burden on their skinny little shoulders. I'm the one who knows how to teach how the brain best learns in 2nd grade or in 7th grade or whatever it might be. Oh, so I'm going to look at my decisions and her decisions or his decisions, but I'm not going to blame the kid when they fail to learn in the thing in my head that is so overly familiar. I forgot what it's like to see things with first-time eyes. And the myths and misconceptions that I had and other people had. So I need to own that. I need to be open to that. Oh, I teach the way they learn. Well, here are 2 biases that are very common that dramatically affect not just instruction, but assessment and grading, which is what today is really focused on, which is really focused. First one is, even introverted teachers do this. But in American society, we tend to reward extroversion over introversion. If you're introverted, you're very, very quiet. One of the first things that some people do out of active compassion, but really is very biasing, is, oh, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you talking? Because we elevate, we prioritize extrovert behaviors, talking, engagement, and that sort of thing. But imagine a class. I'm asking you to do extroverted things, but you're a very strong introvert. So we do class participation. And I tally the number of times you talk. Well, no, you talk very little, but what you say is really pithy and germane to what we're talking about. It's really important. Oh, you really are participating all the way through. But I didn't see it because I had this filter where I prioritized, I advantaged extroversion over introversion. But wait, what about when I want you to do an oral presentation or work collaboratively with others and you're going to be graded on that? Now I've actually created a filter that might actually create a false report of what you really know about the science, or religion, or theology, or coding, or whatever it might be. I'm saying to you again, extrovert teachers, we do that, but introvert teachers do it as well. So my family, we read Susan Cain's Quiet. I highly recommend that wonderful book, Susan Cain, C-A-I-N, like Abel, Cain and Abel, you know, right? But Cain. Wonderful book. And we found that we were exactly half and half. The family split, my wife and I and our kids, exactly in half, introverts and extroverts. And I began to realize, oh, we cannot afford to have half the generation not get these things, these wonderful things that they have these filters that might falsify the grade, all that stuff. We have to go out of our way to make sure that we're there. Here's another bias. We tend to prioritize and advantagize, so to speak, linguistic portrayal, linguistic processing, linguistic expressions. Non-linguistic expressions are actually very cool. In fact, they're in the top 9 all-time most effective things a teacher can do, according to Bob Marzano, according to John Hattie, meta-analyses and effect size and so on. Non-linguistic doesn't mean it's devoid of all words, but it means words are very incidental. You might do an art piece, but there's some words that are labels. That would be like the extent of the use of language. Well, I have a lot of kids who have learning disabilities, or English language learners, or they just don't have the vocabulary yet because they're quite young. And because you lack the language, the word facility, doesn't mean you lack the intellect and the understanding of the social studies, or whatever it is I'm having to teach. So I need to find nonverbal, or at least where words are like really low priority on all this, ways for you to express stuff. So yeah, you could do an interpretive dance about mitosis versus meiosis. If you can pull that off, that's great. But usually it's a drawing thing or a movement thing. Can your arms actually demonstrate the different angles in geometry? Yes. Can they also demonstrate the relationship between a bunch of other things? Can I have hanging rope where you combine like items in some kind of math equation where you're trying to simplify the expression or something? Yeah, I can do that. Can I weave in kinesthetic, more visual, other artistic forms, fine and performing arts, and you still get to the same evidence? Yes. It doesn't mean it's any less legitimate of an assessment when you do that. Because you're chasing evidence, not that they followed a particular format, unless you were literally teaching that format, then that's really important. So understand, we can get up to speed on non-linguistic things, but right now you might be going, Rick, there's this thing I teach, there's no way to do that non-linguistically. Now when I say linguistic, it usually means talking or writing. And again, I'm saying you probably have exhausted your creativity cup, you need to drink from something else.